Hello, my name is Corinne McGreevy, and this is my special education timeline. On May 17, 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court decided in the Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka case that it was unconstitutional for educational institutions to segregate children by race. This landmark legal ruling would have far-reaching implications for special education arena. On April 9, 1965, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA, was signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson as part of the War on Poverty. ESEA not only called for equal access to education for all students, but also federal funding for both primary and secondary education for students disadvantaged by poverty. This is a picture of Lyndon B. Johnson signing into the law. On October 8, 1971, in the Pennsylvania Association for Retarded Children (PARC) versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania ruling, the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania sided in favor of students with intellectual and learning disabilities in state-run institutions. Park versus Penn called for students with disabilities to be placed in publicly funded school settings that met their individual educational needs based on a proper and thorough evaluation. December 17, 1971. In the Mills versus Board of Education of the District of Columbia case, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia students classified as exceptional, including those with mental and learning disabilities and behavioral issues. This ruling made it unlawful for the D.C. Board of Education to deny these individuals access to publicly funded educational opportunities. In 1972, there was the Congregational investigation. In the wave of the Park and Mills ruling, Congress set out to uncover how many children with special education needs were being undeserved. The Bureau of Education for the Handicapped found that there were 8 million children requiring special education services. Of this total, 3.9 million students adequately had their educational needs met, 2.5 million were receiving a substandard education, and 1.57 million were not in school. And this is them doing the investigation. This is just a picture of them going over, what needs to be done, what's going on, and their numbers. On November 29, 1975, President Gerald Ford signed the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, otherwise known as Public Law 94-142. This law required all states that accepted money from the federal government were required to provide equal access to education for children with disabilities, in addition to providing them with one free meal per day. States had the responsibility to ensure compliance under the law within all of their public school systems. This is a picture, it's a newspaper clipping of President Gerald Ford signing the new law. On October 8th in 1976, Public Law 99-457 was an amendment to the All Handicapped Children Act, which mandated that individual states provide services to families of children born with disabilities from the time they are born. Previously, these services were not available until a child reached the age of 3. On August 6, 1986, President Reagan signed the Handicapped Children's Protection Act, a law that gave parents of children with disabilities more say in the development of their child's individual education plan, or also known as an IEP. On January 1, 1990, Public Law 101-476 called for significant changes to Public Law 94-142, or the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. Traumatic brain injury and autism were added as new disability categories. Additionally, Congress mandated that as a part of a student's IEP, Individualized Education Plan, an individual transition plan, or ITP, must be developed to help the student transition to post-secondary life. June 4, 1977. The Education for All Handicapped Children's Act became the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. President Clinton reauthorized IDEA with several key amendments that emphasize providing all students with access to the same curriculum. Additionally, states were given the authority to expand the developmental delay definition from birth through 5 years of age to also include students between the ages 6 and 9. On December 3, 2004, Congress amended IDEA by calling for early intervention for students, greater accountability, and improved educational outcomes, and raised the standards for instructors who teach special education classes. It also required states to demand that local school districts shift up to 15% of their special education funds toward general education if it were determined that a disproportionate number of students from minority groups were placed in special education for reasons other than disability. Thank you all for joining in my video of my special education timeline.